See any questions today, so maybe I can. All right, I think we are up and running and live now, which is good. Hey everyone, it's Jesse, and I'm back here with Neil, and
Hey
John's
guys.
with us as well. I think we're ready to some more Let's Plays this week, Neil. Gonna do something a little different this week. I guess we're gonna build a deck first because we were having some technical difficulties, and I blew up your decks.
Yeah, that was.
So,
It happens. It happens.
So let's build a Protoan deck this week. Let's kind of walk people through the deck building process and see what everybody thinks about that total process. You know, how
hey
do you
guys,
go
can you
about it,
stop
what
talking
do,
for a
stuff
minute?
like that.
Sorry to interrupt. You got massive feedback going on.
What kind of feedback? What kind of feedback we have?
I don't hear anything. What do you hear? Is it me or Jesse, John?
No, he's. I have no idea what would be causing that. Testing.
I still don't get anything.
Testing. I'm just getting. I mean, I'm hearing it now on the live stream.
I still don't get anything.
But I'm getting clean audio off of my iPad. Testing. I'm just getting, because I have my iPad watching the stream. So, are you sure it's not coming through on separate computers on your end, John? Because my YouTube sounds fine. Might have a small technical difficulty, but we're gonna see if we can figure it out.
Do you have the chat on in Tabletop Simulator, or do I?
No,
Is that
it's
push to talk.
It's push to talk on Tabletop Simulator.
I'm assuming it's just us three on the call versus what's visible in the live chat. So I'm not sure what's causing the looping.
Well, so what I was telling you, that if you have your YouTube volume up,
Yeah, I have it
You're
off.
here. How are you? You shouldn't, like, I'm listening. Like, if I turn I have my volume muted on my iPad, but if I unmute my volume, everything's coming through fine. There's a delay. So like if you're hearing me talk on the Hangout right now and you're listening to the YouTube channel at all, then you're going to hear it come back a second time, what I said about 2 or 3 seconds afterwards because of the delay. So like I mute my YouTube window during the live stream.
If you guys aren't getting it, I guess I won't worry about it. I'll just turn my volume completely off.
It sounds okay to me. I linked it to Zach and Spencer to see if they'll get on and listen to it from an external source and see if it's, because I don't know how many viewers we actually have right now.
Is it 3? But I think they're probably us.
It says 2 watching. One of them's me.
Well, yeah, and I've got one up.
We'll see if one of them listens. Anyway, we should try to build the deck.
Yeah. I agree. 1 second. Yeah, so let's go ahead and get started on that and see what we can come up with, and hopefully somebody will make a comment here. If we've got an audio problem, we'll kill the stream and try to figure out the technical difficulties at that point. But I'm not hearing it on my iPad, just watching the stream from the outside, and I'm on a different network with it. I'm on the hotel network, so I would think that would make it okay. But all right, so to get back at it here, we are going to do some deck building. So Neil, let's grab the Ranatera cards. We're going to build that Protoan, and we're going to build, kind of build up a Protoan. So where do you usually start when you're building a Protoan? I'm going to grab the alpha cards out as well, and then we'll grab them.
The first 2 cards I always put in are Hatchery and Lifeblood.
Okay.
I have never built a list that doesn't have 4 copies of both those cards. Every deck should be playing their faction's version of the Sularia cheaters.
Token production.
Mm-hmm. Whether it's, Masterminding Program or Spoils of War or Secret Stash, or in this case, Lifeblood. Lifeblood specifically has no downside at 1 CC. It's just a great card. And
okay. Well, so let's start there. So if you were a builder later, what you do is you would open up this custom deck for Ranatera. We're specifically looking for Lifeblood to start here, and you want 4 copies of that, correct?
Yes.
All right. So what I'll usually do, just to make sure I never break the pre-built, is I'll just grab the card right out of the stack, and I'll just Control C and then Control V.
Jesse.
That's fine.
There we go.
And so we'll grab the Lifeblood and put it out, and then you said Agrifol Hatchery is next.
Yep, I think that's probably their best card.
Okay, so Agrifol Hatchery falls into, we talked about it in last week's stream, right? So an Agrifol Hatchery definitely falls into that, powerful, card place, and then on top of that, it is a construction point card. So where Lifeblood doesn't cost any points, we can kind of freely add those cards as well. So I'm going to leave that kind of down here on the bottom. I'm going to move the initiative dice out of the way for now. I'm going to put the 2-point cards up here in the row right above it, and then anything that costs more than that will skip here. So let's see. So from there, I guess it really kind of comes down to, for me, I always start just trying to decide, are we building for token production or are we building for, something different like, surrendering the tokens and eating the tokens up. So what do you prefer, or what do you want to build today? Which one do you think is kind of the most intriguing or more fun option to do right now?
Well, so today we're playing with the alphabet cards. If you guys are alpha members, you'll have seen them already, or you've been to the website. We have them posted on Twitter and everything. So that being said, when you asked me to build a deck earlier today, when I was looking at lists, I was playing all the alpha cards. There's only three of them available, but they're all really good.
So we got the Hive here. I'll bring it out. Hive of Sarah is a new Type 1 site for the Protoan. It's a 4-drop site. It does cost 3 construction, but it does have some nice abilities. And if you just kind of alt over that and hit your alt key, Neo, you'll pop it up big on the screen for everybody to see it. And basically what that is it's going to make 1/1 tokens for us, and it's also going to help us get out of Type 1 faster, called Primordial Sarah. So I'm going to go grab the Sarah while you're kind of showing the world what it's capable of.
Hive is just like a super hatchery. It costs you a bunch of construction points, but it's very strong. Its stats are good. It makes a token every turn, and I'll show you the Hive of Sarah in a second, but it just plays I'll show you the Primordial Sarah in a second, and it just plays your Primordial Sarahs for free, and it searches your deck for them, so it draws them for you. It's like, because of this card, you don't even want to draw Primordial Sarah. You just want to have it in your deck so you can get it. Not that it's bad to draw. The thing's a good card, but this really pushes it over the top.
So do you consider a full playset of Hive of Sarahs, or do you want to minimize that?
Every time I start building the deck, I always put 4 in, thinking that I want to draw it all the time. Okay. But at 3cc, it's very difficult, and it's one of the first cuts I make since it's a Type 1. Drawing it in multiples is not great.
Not without taking some damage.
You want to always have it on time. So I think 3 copies is usually the right number. But if you're starved for points, like that, this is a card that you can cut to get a bunch of points back. The Primordial Sarah itself is not any points. It's free. These 1-point cards don't take up a slot in your deck points-wise, and it's just like a solid guy. It is a Type 1, but unlike most Type 1s, it doesn't hurt you as bad for having multiples, because the second one makes the first one bigger.
Right.
And that.
No, I totally agree. And obviously, I ran a deck with Primordials in it before Hive of Sarah had been released into Alpha Program yet at Great Plains Game Festival. And Primordial Sarah is just a good all-around combatant at 5/4 for Solarium. It's a solid size combatant, and then of course has no downside of drawing the second copy, because you can play it on top of it. And the original one, like the normal Type 1 rule would be, instead gets you 2+2+2 +1/+1 counters for a total of +2/+2. So just a good upside card, and of course the Hive just makes her all that much better.
Yeah, the card itself is a fine card. It's just like a reasonably sized body, but the Hive of Sarah really pushes it over the top when you have when your sites just have activate, make a 5/4.
Right. So the next one is this Infestation card, and this is a tactic card. One construction cost, 4 threshold, pretty powerful ability, right in line with what the Protoan want to do, which is basically disrupt pretty much everything that you're trying to do. And so Infestation puts an interference counter on a site, and it would diffuse that site. So just to explain what that means, it means it turns off the card text of the site, but it also turns off the Solarian production of that site. So, very powerful, very capable of wrecking an opponent's board state, and obviously helps with some very key threats that the Protoan have difficulty dealing with in other factions like Centropolis, for example, and also satellite network facility is a good example of that. And
this is another,
and,
has a really high power level
mm-hmm.
for being 1 CC. And so, it doesn't take up points in your deck, and it's always impactful, and it's a very good card.
This was a card that was missing in my GPGF deck that I sorely missed when we were playing in that tournament. So I think 4 of makes sense on that card too. So we kind of got a good shell going. At this point, we've got 9 points from the hives, and then we've got 8 points from the hatcheries. And a little trick that I like to tell people, to help them out with this is basically the 2-point cards cost you 1 extra point in your deck build, and the 3-point cards cost you 2 extra points, and you have a surplus of 30 points available. So right now we're at 6 and another 4. We got 10. So we've covered a third of our 30 points just in the hive and hatchery configuration. But I think, I don't know, Neil, do you start with sites, or do you go a different route with this and start with combatants? What's your typical build out once you start kind of going in those directions?
Most times, if I'm not using the deck builder, I use an Excel sheet.
Mm-hmm.
And I just start with a list of the cards that I want in the deck. So I'll just write down all the names of the cards.
Okay.
And then next to them on the left, I put how many of them I think I want to play, and next to them on the right, I put how many points it would be. And Excel is a cool thing where if you highlight all the fields, it'll count them for you. So it's really easy to count up 60, 90.
Sure.
If I'm building them on paper, like in person, I'll do it kind of like we're doing on Tabletop Simulator right here, where I just take all the cards I want to play, put the pile of ones one place and a pile of all the others another place, and I'll just make it such that, because in a perfect world, you'll have 31s and 32s. That adds up to the 60, 90 point system. So for every 3 that you add, you need an additional 1. So because we have 3 hives of Sarah, we need 33 ones.
Right.
And if we had more 3-point cards, we would need 36 ones maybe. And I just have my pile of ones then that I want to play. I cut it down to 33 or 36 or whatever. And then do the same with the pile of 2s and 3 or 4s. And I found that works pretty good.
I sometimes like to start with the sites, because the sites tend to be your backbone. So that for me has been the way I typically build, is I'll build the site curve first, kind of keeping in mind the overall design goals of the deck. So if I'm trying to push playing combatants, obviously, and if those combatants have big solarium expenses, then I'll try to fit in somewhere between 18 to 20. But if I'm playing all low cost combatants, like things that cost 5 or less, I may trim those sites down as low as 14 sites. It just kind of depends on what we're wanting to do there.
Yeah, and I like the decks that have really low site counts.
Yeah, sure.
8 sometimes.
Yeah. That's a little low for my flavor, but I mean, I guess everybody's got their own reasons for those kinds of things.
It's a very specific build when you go that low, but
yeah, I can imagine. But I think in the case of this, obviously, we're going to want to put in some sites, some cheap sites. So if you don't mind, we can kind of start on sites if that works for you. And just because I'm not sure I'll be able to full deck without maybe starting there, it kind of gets me out of my comfort zone.
That's just fine. The sites I find are the most difficult part of the Protoan builds, because first off, they have so many. They just have a high site count as compared to the other factions.
So I grabbed the Deathspore Forest. It's a 1-drop site. So we've got currently a 2-drop and a 4-drop, right? I mean, we've got the 4 hatcheries and 3 hives. Assuming that we're kind of going on the lower end of the combatant curve with the Protoan here, are we going to try to push up to a Scobin or something like that? Or are we gonna
if you're going to
keep
play
things down?
Scopin, it's not going to be played off sites.
Well, that's
But
true. That's true. But it could be.
I
So
I tend to top out at 4 in Protoan,
okay,
though in the token list, I like to play a Kalara or two,
okay,
but I don't really count that as a site. It's more like a win condition because
sure,
you're not playing that site to like produce resources. You're not playing that site to like shore up your defenses or anything. You're playing that site so you can like make a million +1/+1 counters and smash them.
sure.
So it kind of doesn't count. Um, I think in the token list that I built last time, Hive of Sarah was like the top of the curve of sites,
Okay.
and I had all the hatcheries, and then some number of Death Spores, Subterranean Layers, and Ashfalls.
Yep. So I just grabbed both of the one drop sites here because I kind of want to talk about them, even though they don't have artwork on them. They're both key sites and really kind of dictate what else you're going to do. So you've got the Death Spore Force. It's a one influence 04 site, makes one Solarium, but it's a 1 CC card. So this is your prototypical one cost site, right? That's just a generic one drop site. Helps stabilize the board, helps you get your resources like your Solarium moving, things of that nature. So pretty good card just to consider all the time if you're going to go with a good one cost site. The other one though is the one next to it, which is Metamorphosis Chamber, and this is a 2 CC site, one drop. It's an 03, so it's not as strong as the Death Spore Forest, but the ability is very, very powerful, and it allows you to activate the Metamorphosis Chamber and then surrender a Protoan combatant you have in play. And when you do that, you're allowed to put a +1/+1 counter on another Protoan combatant you control. So the idea behind this is, if you're going the token production route and then you want to play big guys and make them bigger, Metamorphosis is a really good support card for that option. It's also really good with the Tricentis around. So if you can, say, Metamorphosis into Tricentis and then play a turn 2 hatchery, make a token. You make that token a 2/2, but turn around and make 3/1/1s off the Tricentis. So you can really start to get those synergies going really early in the game if you go that route.
Yeah, most times not that the +1/+1 counter isn't impactful because it usually is, but the ability to surrender the Proton combatant is why you play this. There's just lots of synergies with that, and
exactly.
This is a very early game play that allows you to do it.
So I think it really does depend. Like, are we going kind of top end and looking like top end being Megalithid at 9 Solarium and surrendering guys, and do we want to stick with that theme, or do we want to play to the scope of like just making early powerful combatants and then building them stronger through various different outlets for that? It's a good question and one that I can't tell you as a listener what's the right way to go, because quite frankly, it just depends on what your play style is, and whichever way you like to play is going to be the best way to play. So
the Proton are pretty good at both going wide and making a lot of little guys, or going tall and making one, big threat. And both decks have proved to be pretty good in testing. And
so, in my opinion, like the best thing we could do here is I know we've got a fair amount of points already kind of locked up. So I'd like to set Metamorphosis Chamber aside for just now, and maybe we'll come back to it because I'm not sure we have the deck really hasn't shaped itself out yet enough to know whether or not Metamorphosis Chamber is worth putting in versus just playing some number of the Death Spore Forests. And because we have Lifeblood, I think we don't need a full play set of Death Spore because the Lifeblood acts like a one-drop site for us too in that respect.
The one-drop sites for Protoan are a point of contention whenever I'm building a deck. I'm always not entirely sure what the best split is, because Lifeblood's such a great card. Like you were just saying, it takes the place of Death Spore pretty easily, and that's not to say you shouldn't play Death Spores. I always run some number of them because it's a 1 CC. It's difficult. Like if you want to play Metamorphosis Chambers, you need 4 Death Spores. I don't know. It's really
Right.
dependent on the other cards you want to put in your deck, because that second CC point on a 1-drop site is pretty expensive.
Well, even if we're shooting for like a mid-range site build around 16 sites, which is mid-range for me, probably it feels like a ton for you. But I think some number of 1-drop sites just helps get it helps you be more consistent early in the game.
Absolutely. And if you're playing Tricentis, it's very important that you have one Solarium on turn 1. So the Lifeblood by itself is not enough. You should have some number of Death Spores or Metamorphoses so that you can always hit that Tricentis.
Let's go with 4 of the Death Spores for now. And we can always shave one if we want. And I'm going to put that down here in the 1 CC pile for now. But so now we're sitting on 4, 8, 11 sites. So we only really have, if we're going to stick to 16 sites in the plan, we've only got 5 more sites for room. So again, I'm going to set that Metamorphosis chamber aside. It may come back into play, but I think we need to get a good 3-drop site into the curve. So there's 2 options here too. So I'm going to pull both of those out and let folks kind of look at those and decide from there. So we've got a 1 CC site yet again, which is Miasma Projector, and then we've got a 2 CC site in Ashfall Plains. And we definitely want to look at these 2, and really goes back to the same kind of debate we were having. I think we're making a lot of tokens. Miasma Projector is a really good card here because you're using tokens as an outlet for winning games means that you're probably not investing Solarium in combatants very frequently or as frequently, because you're just letting the token production kind of snowball for you. And so then using that Solarium to essentially weaken your opponent's, biggest threat on the battlefield turn after turn with the projector is really good strategy. Or you can go the route of, like, if we're doing the whole surrender route where we're going to eat things to make our other things bigger, we can go to the Ashfall Plains, and that's just going to be activate the Ashfall Plains and surrender a combatant, and you just get to draw a card off of that. So it's a nice draw engine to continue to fuel like the fires, stoke the flames, if you will. So of these 2, Neil, kind of based on what you're thinking, which card do you prefer and why?
I've always been very partial to Ashfall Plains. Miasma Projector is a very interesting card, and the biggest reason that I go to this one instead is because of the construction point cost. It's an interesting thing to have a Solarium sink that isn't guys to play, right? Like, this is a great card late game because you always have something to do with these resources that if you and your opponent are both kind of cashed out, then you have something to do and they don't. I mean, maybe they have something to do, but you will always have something to do with these resources. You're not just wasting your whole turn that way. And it is a powerful effect. It kills a lot of things outright, and if you hit like a Spartan Terminator or some other mid-rangey guy with it, they're kind of useless.
Exactly. It's really good for just slowing down your opponent's tempo, right? Like it's one of those advantages, but it does cost you 3 Solarium, so you do have to take the approach of like, we're going to go hardcore into the Solarium method and figure out how to do that.
And that's one of those things where, because I like decks that have low site count, I don't like this card as much, because in the low site count deck, you have a lower Solarium output and you activate it like less frequently. So it has a much smaller impact on the game. If you're going more mid-range, you have more sites, you have more Solarium producers, and you have the additional Solarium, it's really easy to lock your opponent out with multiples of these. But you have to be making 6 Solarium and not wanting to do anything else. So if you want to do that and other stuff, you have to be making 10 Solarium, 12 Solarium.
Right. And I think that's where cards like Kyvasera in particular in the hatchery, if you're going the hardcore token route, can really work out for you in your favor, because you're making the tokens. You can get Primordial Seras out still.
You have a lot of threats those are things that cost you Solarium that way.
Exactly. Yep. So I think, though, in this deck in particular, since we're not really going hardcore into that, I'd like to maybe take the Ashfall Plains in some number. Do you think a play set of them is the right call?
I rarely play all 4 of these.
Okay.
As you go further up the influence curve, you have more chance to draw this card on time. Similar to the Hive of Sarah, where like you do want to have it on time always, but by the time that we've played it, we'll have, drawn at least 4 cards and also looked at 7, possibly, mulliganed up to that point. So, and this card is good enough that it's impactful on 4. So if you miss the Hive of Sarah, you can play it alongside a Despore or even just by itself, and it's still fine.
Right. So should we just go with 3 for now? Do you think that's a sufficient number?
I usually think 3 is the right number.
Okay.
It's one that we can, if we have an additional point at the end, we can add another one.
Sure. All right, so let's bring that over. Plus, we were already talking about how we were kind of getting into the upper threshold of the total number of sites for the deck anyways, right? So I think not going with a play set's not going to hurt us any, because we've got 4 Death Spores now. Our 2-drop is 4 Agrafil Hatcheries, Astral Plains, and 3 Hive of Sarahs. So what we've got now is 8, and 3 is 11, and another 3 is 14. So that really only leaves us, if we're going for that kind of medium threshold of 16 sites, we've got probably, 1 more site that we can add in here in total, and that's probably about it, right? So we got to do one other thing here. Sorry, I got a little excited and almost broke the mod if we needed to pull Ashfall as a second copy there. So anyways, I think this goes back to, like you were talking about before, you don't consider Kalara one of those sites, but if we're not considering Kalara into that realm, I think 2 Carapace Dome at the 4 is another great 4-drop site solution. So I'm going to bring out a Dome here. We can kind of look at it. I talked about it in the most recent Kickstarter update. It's brings a new ability to the battlefield. Hardened is the ability, and it's a 1/7, and of course it has this nice little extra text on it that says, if Carapace Dome is in your front row, your opponent may not attack sites not named Carapace Dome. So really good way to slow your opponent's tempo, and particularly strong against the Jotun, who can sometimes by this stage of the game have a very overwhelming board presence, almost lethal board presence. The fact that you can slow them down for a turn or 2 with Carapace Dome is a very, very excellent way to kind of make sure you're staying in the game and give you more time to kind of do the things you want to do. How do you feel about this site and maybe running a couple copies to get us to that 16 point?
Carapace Dome's a fine site. It's free. Like anything that has a 1 at the bottom is inherently powerful. So this being free, it has decent stats, and like you said, it really like brick walls your opponent. It like in some games it's very similar to taking an extra turn. Even like you, if they don't have a way to kill it or get it out of the way, like you're just blanking their attack and taking 4 damage, and that's powerful. If like you said, the Jotun could easily kill you by turn 4, and that's very true. They just can't through this thing. If you don't have another one, that'll give you the next turn, but it does give you that additional turn to
which may be all it takes for you to win the game instead. So
right,
I mean,
the
that's
Protoan are pretty aggressive too, so it's swingy.
Yep. I think it's a really good card in that respect, because it just pushes that extra layer of like. And like I said, I think it's arguably one of the cards of the pack for sure. But I mean, we're not going to run a full play set because we already got 3 hives. So this takes our 4-drops up to a total of 5, and that's actually a little high on the 4-drop side. I mean, the last thing we want is an opening hand that's stuck with all 4-drops, right? We need opening hands that have lower cost curves. But I think in this case we'll be okay, and it gets us right to that 16 site limit. So,
and
I mean,
Hive of Sarah does a pretty good job of like its stats are big enough it's almost a 5, and by itself it's like a threat of its own. So it's similar to Kalara in that way, where like it is a site, it does produce Sularia, but it also is just like an avenue to victory by itself. And because of that, we can have these Carapace Domes or whatever and just play the Hive of Sarah on 5 or 6 when we have it. It's still good.
That's right. Yeah, and I actually like the idea of, if you can get the Carapace Dome out, if your opponent doesn't have a big enough board to take it down, play Carapace or play Hive of Sarah on time, and then turn 5 followed up with a Carapace Dome, and now you've got 2 protected turns with that Hive of Sarah.
Yeah, Carapace Dome also imitates like a tactic in that it kind of blocks their attack. It does more than just be a site. So even if you're like Solarium flooded, it still does something. Even if you're late game, it still does something. It's
it's just an all-around good card. Now, pro tip for those of you watching this stream or watching the video post stream, the dome is not good in multiples in play at the same time. So if you get a second copy of the dome, you better hold off on it, because your opponent can attack both domes if they've got enough power in play. So you definitely want to minimize the power attacks, and by doing that, by only having one dome in play. So it kind of works in a quasi type 1 sort of way as well. But that's just kind of a pro tip for those of you maybe getting into the game new and wanting to leverage cards at maximum value. So okay, so we got 16 sites now. Obviously, we have selected a single combatant in Primordial Sarah right now, but I think we'll kind of go to the combatant curve. And this is what I usually do: is I'll start building combatants, and then I'll start to look at, well, what tactics and conditions do I need to round it out, and then start making cuts from there. So I want to talk about the first guy on the list. We already mentioned him, Tricentis, and this is the only 1-cost combatant that the Protoan have. It is, I'm going to copy it over so I don't break it. It is a 0/1 for 1 Solarium, and it says whenever Tricentis dies, place 3 1/1 Protoan combatant tokens into play, activated under your control. And this guy is just a beast. Talk about pure upside. You get 3 1/1 combatants for the cost of 1 Solarium. You're just not going to find a better exchange in Sularia for your Solarium, quite literally. So I'm not sure there's a ton to talk about. It is a type 3, which is something of note, meaning that if you have 4 of them and you've got 3 in play already, you can't put that 4th one down without at least
one of these days, Jesse. I'm going to do it.
I know.
I've been waiting so long, but it never has come up. This guy's great. He's a powerhouse. We already talked about how they have surrender their own guys theme to do powerful things, and this guy is even more powerful than that. Like, he wants to die, and he's just great.
Yeah, he's a great target for the Ashfall Plains for sure. Obviously you hope to kill him sooner than that. Hint, hint, attack on your opponent's site that's got some attack power and let him die. That's always my favorite way to kind of kill him is, I play him turn 1, turn 2, swing into like my opponent's watchtower or something, and that 1 attack from the watchtower kills my Tricentis. It makes me 3 little 1/1s. That's my favorite way to
for all you alpha members, though, Solarium Storm is a card in the list now. Yep. For Cynthian, and this guy is a good counter to that to a certain extent, as long as you leave him as a 0/1 and don't sack him, because they got to be scared to play their Storm when it's just going to make you 3 guys.
That's right. It's a really good counterpoint to the Solarium Storm. Tricentis is a great piece to that, and we'll get into another guy that here a little bit later in the cost curve that will kind of help us there too. So yeah, we've got Tricentis here. I'm all in on Tricentis. If you are.
It's very rare that I don't play 4 of him. In some decks that are not token decks, I have not played him because he is 2 CC, and unless you're going really hard in the ability to kill him and the ability to pump the tokens you get or get value out of the tokens you get, he's not as good. But I mean, we're never going to live the dream of invoking the type 3 without playing 4 copies.
Right. So. No, you're absolutely correct. And I think, he's all upside other than a little bit of a mild construction cost, which, I think we can offset here in this particular build. So next I'm going to bring out the 1/2 Solarium combatant, introducing the first type 1 for the Protoan into this list potentially. Oh, I just made an extra copy of Tricentises.
You put in my
I made
hand
3
too.
extra copies. Yep, I'm gonna put a whole bunch of them over there. I think maybe I'm having some technical difficulties, but
Did
I
you
can
kill
delete
the?
this.
Here, let me put him back on the table for you. I don't know if you can get him out of my hand or not.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
There's still 4 in the deck.
All right, well, I'm just gonna put him right over here.
That's cool. So to kind of get back on track here, we've got Serana. She's a 2 Solarium combatant, 4/3 with flight, type 1. I mean, again, 2 construction costs. So we're back here like another guy that's going to cost us some points in our deck build if we want to put her in there. She is a doozy. I mean, a 4/3 flyer for 2 Solarium. She's very near, Lord Oathkey power for half the Solarium. 1 less construction cost. Obviously, Oathkey higher on the offensive side, but the fact that Serana can line up against Oathkey and kill him in the early game, which is a Jotun flyer, is really, really a good, solid place to be. And Serana's cheap too. It's never a bad idea trading Serana for the Spartan Terminators and some of those other things. In a single Bloodlust, and she scales up and even to the 6 drops on the Scythian side that have power. So
she's a beater. Lifeblood being 1 threshold allows you to play her on turn 1, and she kills every 1-drop site. So if you're on the play, you just get them. Even if you play her fair on turn 2 after playing sites or whatever, she gets a large number of the 2-drop sites, and since she can fly, she just eats their 1-drop site. Her math is very, very good for that, like disrupting early game resources of your opponent.
Yep. No, I agree. Now the question is she fit this build, or are we going to go a little higher up the curve here? Because we can. I feel like if we take this route, we're starting to go into like the low cost kind of Protoan rush deck, right? Where we're going to keep all the costs of the combatants down. We're going to try to take the line of like making some tokens to help and just push really fast for like turn 1 Tricentis, turn 2 Serana, or turn 1 Serana in the ideal world with Tricentis follow up.
Right. That deck
those are the
has
kinds
a
of
lot
things
of
that
damage output, and it's very aggressive, but I don't think it has the reach of the token deck, and honestly, I just don't think it's as fun as a token deck. That's just preference. If you guys like playing big guys, Serana is your girl, but for me, I like to dirtle a little more than that, so I think that we should go full tokens. And
all right, let's do it then. So let's leave Serana in the bin for this deck, although she's a very powerful card that can go in a variety of decks. So
the artwork is sweet.
Oh yeah,
we've had that art for a long time, and it's very cool.
Tots has just done an amazing job on that card. All right, so I'm going to grab the 3 cost combatants now, because now we're starting to get into the meat of their cost curve. Let me get both of them out here. I think there's just the 2. Yeah. Yep. Okay, I'm going to make copies of those quick, and then I'll put them back so I don't break things. Not that you really can. Yep. So this is a 1cc card, and typically we use construction costs as not only a dictator to power of a card, but we also use it to kind of when an ability is less complex, it goes on a 1cc card. So we have the Itinerous Queen. It's a 3 Solarium, 2/2, and at the start of your combatant phase, you may place 1/1 Protoan combatant token into play activated under your control. So the turn you play her, you're not going to get a token, but if she survives the whole round, comes around to your next combatant phase, yeah, she's going to start pumping out 1/1s every turn after that you take. Very strong card for 1cc. I think she fits this, if you want to dirtle up and play the token build, this is almost a guaranteed staple in every token deck.
Right.
Which means that as playing against it, you're going to have to plan for Itinerous Queens because they're going to be in a lot of decks.
Yeah, this card is the poor man's hatchery. Like it's just a hatchery that dies to booby trap, which is not great. Like a lot of things do kill it, and they kill it before it makes a token. But
for those of you that don't know, Booby Trap is an Xolarian card, available in the Alpha program right now if you're playing Xolarian. For those of you that are just looking at Reign of Terror, it's not out yet. So that does give the Itinerous Queen a little bit more breathing room until the Xolarians come to play.
Right. So This card is like very vulnerable to a lot of removal spells. It doesn't attack very well on its own, but it just generates you incremental advantage, the same way that Hatchery does, the same way that any of the token producers do, where the longer this is in play, the better off you are. It doesn't take very long before those tokens are in a vacuum outside of anything else you're doing. It doesn't take very many turns of the Hatchery and a Queen in play to like kill your opponent. If they can't deal with it, you're gonna overrun them. And
Yep.
I mean that's part of why this card's stats are very small.
It's a big part
really
of it, for sure.
Really good.
So I think we definitely want 4 of this card, if I'm not mistaken. Right?
It's free. It's great. It's
all right. So we're gonna put those down in the bottom row now, Neil, and we're gonna move on because we've got another doozy of a 3-drop here, and I think if we're playing the token build, it's got to be considered for sure. I mean, if you're not considering this card, it's probably a major mistake in your tokens. So we've got Matarox here, and Matarox is a 3 Solarium combatant, 3 CC, 1/1. But the ability, again, matches the card construction cost here. So when you put a +1/+1 counter on it. So really it comes out as a 2/2, matches the Itimerous Queen in stats right out of the gate. But at the start of your combatant phase, you may remove a 1/1 counter from Matarox and place into play a 1/1 Protoan combatant token activated under your control. You may only use this ability once per turn. So if I wanted to, during my combatant phase at the start of it, so again, I got to go all the way around to the next combatant phase to use this ability, but when I do that, I could pull the 1/1 counter off and in turn put a 1/1 token out. So the other last part of this ability, which is probably the most important, Protoan combatant token dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Matarox. So every time my tokens die, Matarox gets bigger. So we were just talking about Solarium Storm, right? And this is really the kind of antithesis of Solarium Storm in that if you have a Matarox in play and your opponent storms you, it kills 4 or 5 combatants. Matarox just got 4 +1/+1 counters. I mean, it's just an enormous uptick.
right.
In capability.
You got to make sure you keep it bigger than a 1/1 so it doesn't die of the storm. That's not very hard to do.
No, I agree 100%. And we'll get into some other synergies with this, but the fact that you can use Ashfall Plains to draw a card and make Matarox bigger really just kind of synergizes all the way around with that plan of making a big guy, right?
The thing by itself is a little worse than Queen. It's a 2/2 for 3, just like the Queen. In order to make a guy get smaller, you can only do it once. That's assuming that nothing else is going on. As soon as you have anything else going on, this card's infinite better. It's so good. If you have one sack outlet, it breaks even, but you get the benefit of whatever the sack outlet is, like Ashfall Plains. So if you just have an Ashfall Plains and a Matarox, you'll always break even. You can make a guy, you can sack the guy, it puts the counter back on, you can make another guy next turn. But you're drawing a card every time. And if you have the Metamorphosis Chamber, you can sack it, put a counter on something, put a counter on Matarox, next turn you're going to make a guy, so on and so forth. As soon as you have 2 Mataroxes in play, every sack outlet is insane value because every sack outlet is 2 more guys.
And I think one other thing that's kind of cool about Metamorphosis Chamber for those players that are just getting into kind of following the synergies and maybe they already saw it or thought about it after our discussions, but with the Chamber in particular, if you surrender a token that Matarox makes to the Chamber, you can put the +1/+1 from the Chamber on Matarox. So really each token death actually nets you a +1/+1 over the base value. So to kind of put that into math and explain that maybe a little better, if I have a 2/2 Matarox, I take a token off of it, turning it into a 1/1 to make the 1/1 token. I then surrender with the Metamorphosis Chamber. I can put a +1/+1 back on Matarox, bringing her back to 2/2. And because a token died to the Metamorphosis Chamber, the 1/1 also triggers from her ability. And so really for that removal, I get a 3/3 Matarox out of the deal. So there's insane value with Metamorphosis Chamber and Matarox on just a single Matarox, let alone getting into multiples. Now, we're not going to play the Chamber in this particular deck, but I don't think that devalues the power of Matarox in this deck.
Oh, yeah.
Particularly we're talking about making tokens.
And there's builds of this deck that you can play Chamber in. For sure. The card's really good,
Yep.
especially with Matarox.
Do you want to go all in on this one, or do you want to do just a smaller playset of it since it's a 3?
Again, I always start with 4, and I always end up cutting 1.
Okay. Well, let's see where we're at. We'll start with 4.
Yeah, just because 3 points is a lot of points, and
I agree.
He's great, but you got to make up points somewhere. I can't have everything.
That's right, and we still got some pretty key combatants to look at and consider, as well as some pretty key tactics and conditions. So we're going to move on to the 4cc guy, or 4 Solarium guys, not 4cc. 4 Solarium guys now, and let's start with the 1cc guy, because maybe this is an auto include, maybe it isn't. It's an interesting card. It's a Scorpion Striker. It's a 4 Solarium 3/3 with quick. And this goes back into that line of, those really aggressive plays where we were talking about, like the turn 1 Serana, turn 2 Serana, followed up very quickly by potentially, a Scorpion Striker, Matarox, those kinds of things that are going to grow and get bigger and more powerful. And, the fact that if we have Serana on the battlefield ready to attack and we make 4 Solarium, the Scorpion can come in, and without any additional help, we've got 7 power between the two, 7 attack value between the two combatants, which hits a lot of sites and kills a lot of sites, all the way up to 4-drop sites pretty easily. Some of the 5 drops, and then really kind of starts pushing up. When you get above that, you're going to need some extra help to have just 2 guys take down those bigger sites. But as a 1cc card, it's tough to not want to include Scorpion Striker in every build. And again, awesome art. Artem Shukov did just an amazing job on the Striker. So what do you think about this card, and do you think it fits in this particular build that we're working on?
I mean, quick is the best ability in the game, right? It's just extremely powerful to be able to attack or block the turn you play it, and this guy's really good. Again, like you were saying, this guy lends itself more to like the aggro deck than the tokens deck. And there's certainly nothing wrong with playing him in the tokens deck. I usually don't, because I think that a Terminus Queen is a better use of your 1cc slots. And that's usually where I find myself like it fights with a Terminus Queen because of CC. There's not really a 4-drop token maker that I want to play. We're going to talk about Hive Queen here in a second, but it's not a 1cc card, so it's hard to compare.
Right.
This is a great card. If I was playing Serranas, I'd be playing Scorpion Strikers. I just usually don't play Scorpion Strikers without Serranas, and since we're not in that vein, I don't know that that's going to go in this deck.
Yep, I think for this deck we can cut the Striker. It doesn't really fit with the theme of making tokens, but it could certainly go in there and be very powerful for you.
Yeah, that card is deceptively powerful. For anyone that has never played the game before, Quick is the best ability in the game, and even though that guy looks smaller than most of the guys at the same cost, he's really good.
Yep, yeah, he's a very, very efficient use of 4 Solarium for sure. So we've got Hive Queen left here, and she could be on the fence to make this build because she definitely plays into the token production. So I've talked about Hive Queen in past updates on their blog and things like that, but just in case you haven't read those, she is a 4 Solarium type 4 combatant, and she costs 2 CC, but she's a 3/3. And then when you deploy her, you immediately get 2 1/1 Protoan tokens activated under your control. So really what we're getting out of this is a 3/3 with 2 1/1 tokens right alongside her. She's a beast. I mean, the reality of it is she comes at a pivotal moment where, if you are playing a Bloodlust or something like that, not only is she turning herself into a 4/4, but each one of those tokens is a 2/2. And so we're getting, for 4 Solarium, an 8/8 value on our next combatant phase where we're going to actually start swinging for an attack. So it's easy to consider her. It is.
Yeah, I end up playing Hive Queens about half the time. In decks I build, it's a great card, right? Like 5/5 stats for 4 threshold is a lot. Oathkey doesn't have that base. Oathkey has other stuff going on. That's why it's 3 CC. But if you look at like just flat stat value, the card is is really good, and it's better and worse that it's in 3 bodies. So it's worse against cards like Storm because the Storm just like kills it, like half of its power. But it's better when you have other stuff going on. If you, like you said, if you have Bloodlust, it's obviously nuts. If you have any of the sack outlets or a Matterox or any of the things that care about tokens, it's better than if it was just a flat 5/5. The thing's really good. Again, the problem with it is that it's not free, and we seem to have this discussion about every card in Protoan because they have a lot of construction cost type decisions. Like if we weren't playing Matteroxes, we'd have a lot more space. We could play this card. But I think we want to go bigger.
Yeah, I mean, I do think you want to. I wouldn't be opposed to maybe considering 2, just to see if we can fit them into the deck. But they would be on my bubble list for, like, if we get tight on either card slots and or construction costs at the end of this thing. They would be my bubble cards. Yeah, let's leave them at 2 for now. The main reason why I don't really want to push much higher than that either is because if we do have to play a Primordial Seraph straight up, which is possible, my line is going to be more focused on Primordial Seraph over the Hive Queen, because of the Hive and being able to like essentially scale the Primordial Seraph much larger as an individual.
Already having Primordial Seraph in the 4-drop slot also devalues the Queen because, like you said, if we're gonna, they're very similar by themselves. They both are just like 5 power for 4, but the Seraph is 1 CC. The Seraph can grow. I mean, the Hive Queen can grow too if you have other, like we were talking about, other stuff going on for the tokens. But the difference in the CC is a big deal, and like having a 5 power 4-drop already, the Hive Queen, is good, but maybe not as good as the Seraph.
Totally agree. So yeah, I'm totally on board with, we'll start at 2, knowing that it's potentially a bubble card, and we can come back to her. But I agree. I think we do want to go taller. From there we go to the Abominid and Dragos. Both of these are really cool cards. Dragos in particular has some synergy with the Matteroxes in terms of like Dragos getting bigger, Matterox getting bigger. It's another sacrifice outlet. We'll talk about these a little bit. I don't want to spend too much time because we are butting up against kind of the scheduled end of this, but I do want to finish out this deck build tonight. So basically the Dragos is a 6/6 for 5 Solarium. It's got flight. It's a type 1, and it's 3 CC. So because we've already got Matteroxes and Hypoceras in this particular build, or 2 CC, my bad. I'm sorry.
Yep.
It does get a little expensive to try to fit this card. Not that it's not a bad finisher. I mean, a 6/6 where every turn you can surrender a combatant token and make it a +1/+1. So pretty easily by the time you get around to actually being able to attack with it, you got yourself an 8/8 flyer for 5 Solarium. That's pretty solid.
Yeah, this guy's he's a beater. He does it about as good as any 5-drop in the game. He attacks.
Yep, that's exactly what he's good for. And, he scales very nicely into matching things like Oath Keys and Fenris's on the Jotun side, or even kind of lining up and being able to smash down a Hecaton Warhulk, is got power in it in of itself as well. Those are decisions you have to make on this card. But I think, again, goes back to if you're playing that kind of aggro line, then he's kind of the coup de grace, right? He's like the coup de grace, sorry, not coup de grace, coup de grace of like, I've played a bunch of beaters and this is going to be my final guy to like finish you off. So
this card's a really good payoff for the decks that have a little bit of tokens, but not a lot of tokens.
Right. Yep.
Because he doesn't need very many tokens to like go off. He's pretty solid even if you have no tokens. But like you said, if you have 2 tokens when you play him, you get to attack for 8 the first time, and he flies, and he's big, and he's scary, and he does a lot of stuff.
Yep, definitely looking forward to seeing the final artwork for Dragos as it comes in. So, but I think for this build, we're gonna put Dragos back in the box.
We got better uses for our tokens than what Dragos is gonna do.
So now we introduce the first new mechanic since Hardened. We talked about Hardened earlier, and that's Challenge in the Abominid. So it's 5 Solarium, 4/4 for 1 CC. Challenge is an ability that when I declare an attack with Abominid, I may choose, which means I don't have to use the ability, but if I choose to, I can force my opponent to defend the Abominid with a combatant of my choice. So they've got a little guy over there, that's pesky or problematic, and the Abominid can kind of just suck it in and kill it, which is really awesome. And then it's got a nice little secondary ability. Again, it goes back to surrendering Protoan combatants you control. Abominid gets +2/+2 this turn. You may use this ability only once per turn. So with this ability in mind, he's a 6/6 for 5, on par with Dragos in terms of power. But Dragos obviously has the ability to scale much higher, and his counters are permanent, whereas the Abomins are not. Not a bad card here, but I do think maybe you'll agree or disagree with me, but I do think we're trying to kind of raise the ceiling even a little higher than this guy right now.
Right. Abom is a very good card. It's a mid-rangey card. Challenge is an ability that I've been very impressed with in all of our testing. Because he just eats a guy.
Mm-hmm.
If they have a bunch of guys, they can block it and kind of just trade with the Abomid and the guy that you challenge, but it still is just, he's almost like a removal spell by himself.
Mm-hmm.
The ability does
repeatable.
So if they're hidden, you can't get them.
And if they have evasion or other kind of evasive maneuver type things, then yeah, they're gonna get away with it. So they're not getting challenged.
Challenge is a very good ability.
Yeah, it really does put good pressure on the opponent. I think right now with the number of combatants that we have in this deck and kind of the costs that we're at, though, like we said, we kind of want to go bigger. And I actually forgot a 5-drop, and probably one of the more important 5-drops.
Yeah, the one that I want to play in this deck.
Yep, exactly. So we're going to put Abominid back in the deck box. We're going to talk about parasitics.
Also, sweet artwork. And if you guys are on the Kickstarter, he is a playmat.
Yep, he is. And, parasitics, we talked about in the latest update and the power of parasitics, but just for those of you that aren't Kickstarter backers yet, which first off, why not? But secondly, I'm going to run through his abilities really quick. Again, 5 Solarium, 2 CC. He is a type 1, 06. So no power, no attack power on him, but big defensive body. Has Virus 2, which is a new ability as well that we need to talk about here. And then he has Parasitics, gets a +1/+0 for each virus counter on Parasitics. So really he comes into play as a 2/6. And then it says whenever a combatant dies, put a virus counter on Parasitics. That's where the money's at on this guy. So that is a combatant on the battlefield, whether it's my own or my opponent's. It doesn't matter. If something dies, Parasitics gets bigger. He just becomes more and more nightmarish as things go. So with those surrender outlets that you have, your sacrifice outlets that you have on the Protoan side, feeding Parasitics bigger and bigger, combine that with just killing things outright through the challenge mechanics or through normal combat or whatever it may be, Parasitics can just become a monster of a combatant. And one that's very difficult for your opponent to deal with.
We were already talking about how good Matarox is that he grows, and Matarox is very specific about what has to die for him to grow, and Parasitics isn't.
That's right.
Also, the other half of the virus mechanic is when a combatant with virus dies, you distribute that many
infection
counters onto your opponent's guys, and the infection counters give -1/-1. So when this guy dies himself, he kills a bunch of other stuff too. And
that's right.
So you're gonna do some funny stuff because he's a type 1. So when you play another one, you'll kill it and it'll spread his virus. And
that's right.
Or if you sack him to whatever, that your deck already wants a bunch of guys to die. This dude's just a huge payoff for all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I love the second Parasitics play, right? Because what happens is the first one has to resolve into play, and so when the first one resolves or the second one resolves into play, the first one dies at that point, and because it dies at that point, you actually net a +1 virus counter out of the deal too, which is
right. The new Parasitics that killed the first one sees the first one die and gets a counter from its own ability.
That's right. So it comes into play actually kind of on its own growth rate of 3 virus counters instead.
Yeah, and I mean, assuming that you're doing this, you're probably killing your opponent's guys with the virus of the first one too, so he'll get those triggers also.
That's right.
It's a chain.
It definitely really synergizes and turns into, a lot of people are scared to play additional parasitics is because, oh well, I don't get to attack with him. Well, the spread of virus and the fact that can turn into even larger parasitics later are just all tempo plays for you. And I definitely think we want to have this guy in this deck. I'm 100% on board with him.
Yeah,
I don't know how many.
Play as many as you want.
Yeah.
This is a card that, like, similar to Tricentis, even though it has a type that like would normally make them not good in multiples, because you want it to die sometimes, it is good in multiples.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. So I think we have to look at kind of the last two combatants and decide what are we trying to accomplish with this deck. So I'm going to pull both of them out. They're on two very different planes.
I don't know. They have similar type abilities.
That's true. But I think one in particular is probably better off than the other. And so we've got Megalithid and Skoban, and these are the two monsters. So let's start with Skoban, because I think Skoban is not going to make the cut in this particular deck. And then we'll talk about Megalithid. So
Which is so sad, because this card is so sweet.
I love Skoban, and Tots did an amazing job. He is just an incredible looking monster. Love it to death. And Type 1, shout out again to Scott Bean, who was the backer that funded the creation of this card. 14 Solarium, 3 CC, 12/12, quick challenge. Skoban costs 1 less Solarium for each Protoan combatant token you control. So if we've got a bunch of tokens, he's a lot cheaper. And then whenever Skoban is declared as an attacker, it may challenge any number of combatants controlled by opponent. So he's just kind of a board wiper, right? Like he just kind of sucks everything in and kills it. Even if he dies, that's okay, because, well, you get value out of him dying.
Right. You get 12 damage worth of like killing your opponent's guys.
That's right. And you did it in such a fashion where you probably got a decent sized horde alongside him. So that's a real value. But in this particular deck, I know we're making tokens, but with parasitics around and Madrox around, which want our tokens to kind of be dying through the course of the game, we're going to have a hard time maybe getting the extra token help to be able to spend the 14 Solarium.
And it's very difficult to play all the Madroxes and the Hive of Serras and the Skobans. That's all. They're all 3 CC cards, and you got to make cuts somewhere.
That's right. So I think Skoban's going to stay in our deck box for this one, but we'll maybe do a Skoban feature later. If it's something you want, shoot us a comment on this video. Let us know on the Kickstarter, whatever it may be, and we'll
for those of you who watched last week, I did crush Jesse with him in one of the games.
You did get off a good one on me last week. So. All right, so that leaves us with Megalithid. And Megalithid is a monster, quite literally.
This is the poor man Skoban, but also probably the rich man Skoban, because it's actually playable in the deck, and it is great.
Yep. So Megalithid, 9 Solarium, Type 2 combatant. That may or may not matter, but it does matter if you're trying to play multiples. Has challenge. When you deploy Megalithid, you may surrender X combatants to reduce its Solarium cost by X. 1 CC, 7/6. Wow. Okay, so I mean, I don't even know where to start. Obviously, we talked about challenge. We know how powerful challenge is. The fact that I'm killing combatants to play him cheaper, which just plays right into my Madrox, plays right into my parasitics. I mean, is there a better deck for this card than this deck where you've got 2 other guys that are going to grow tall?
This is one of the largest Type 1 combatants in the game. Or sorry, not Type 1. 1 CC combatants in the game. Power and toughness, and it has challenge. It's really good at eating other guys because it's so big. And we spent the whole time talking about how you want your guys to die. Like, he has 9 Solarium costs, but most of the time you're going to play him with 2 or 3 based on the additional tokens that you make. Or even you can sack Tricentis to play him. That's very good.
That's my favorite play.
Yeah,
and it's a couple of Tricentis dying to him.
If you have a Madrox or a Parasitics already in play and you play him, you just power them up like crazy. This guy is synergistic and powerful, and he's 1 CC, and he's great.
Sold, Neil. We're playing for him. we want him. We want them to show up, and we want to play as many of them as we possibly can. So I'm sold on them. I don't really think there's much else to talk about there. So combatant wise, we got 4 in the Megalithid. We've got 4 in the Primordial Sarah.
We have a lot of combatants in this deck.
We do, yeah. So that's 12 with the Parasitics, 14 with the Hive Queen, 16 with the Tricentis, 20 with the Matarox. That's a pretty healthy.
That is a lot.
Oh, and I forgot. There's 24. Itinerous Queen. I missed the Itinerous Queen. 24 combatants. So that actually matches up pretty nicely to get us to the 40 when we had 16 sites, right? 16 sites and 24 combatants puts us right at 40. It leaves room in the deck for 20 tactics and conditions. So I think that's actually a pretty good mix. We'll see where we land
to where we want to be, I think.
Yeah, we'll see where we land on the construction costs. Again, Hive Queen to me is still on the bubble, but the extra token production may be a good kind of fill-in play if we don't have something better to play at that point. So let's see. We've got in the tactic and condition suite right now, we've got 4 Lifebloods and 4 Infestations selected. So that's 8 of the 20. So we got 12 cards remaining. I definitely think we want to talk about Bloodlust. It's kind of a staple card in the Protoan. And so I'm going to bring it out here. It's a 4 threshold, 2 CC condition card. All Protoan combatants you control get +1/+1. Really straightforward, simple condition card. Offers a ton of heavy token production, but also offers great value in making those tall threats taller and stronger.
Right. This card's good in any deck. The token deck pushes it further because it has more guys to get the buff, so it's a multiplicative bonus. But even just like if you're playing Serranas and Scorpionid Strikers, it's still good. You're still attacking with a bunch of guys, and this card is always going to be good.
Right.
I don't know how you're going to build a deck where this card isn't good.
No, I agree.
This is my challenge to Kickstarter, guys. Build a deck that you can win with where Bloodlust isn't good.
Well, I don't think you can build a deck where it's not good. It will always make every deck better. But I think there are, to be fair, I've played some Protoan decks that do not have Bloodlust that have been very powerful or have had reduced copies of Bloodlust. But we're going to go ahead and fill in a full play set here and then go from there. I think the next card on my list that we want to talk about from a tactic perspective is Mind Shell. And, for those players that have been around Battle for Sularia for a long time, you know that there's a lot of effects that are going to target your combatants. And the fact that you can protect them from significant damage or significant loss is a huge upswing. And so, obviously this is evasion, which is a mercenary card from the Battle Begins, but it's a threshold point cheaper and it's faction specific, but definitely the earlier timing is really helpful, especially like we were talking about earlier when you start talking about the Exolarian and some of their direct damage abilities and the ability to kind of control your guys even sooner than maybe the Sentient can come online from a burn damage perspective. So I don't think there's any question, unless you got something to add to it. I think we want to play a full play set of Mind Shells here.
Yeah, it's very good. Evasion was very good. Unless we put mercenaries in our deck, which we have not done up to this point, there's no reason that Mind Shell isn't better than it. The only time that evasion is better than Mind Shell is when you have like a Kaiser or a Johnny or whatever mercenary guy, because Mind Shell won't hit those. But this deck in particular has a lot of vulnerable threats in the early game. Like you want to be able to evade your Terminus Queen, you want to be able to evade your Matarox, because the longer that those cards are in play, the more value you get off them, and being able to protect them that way is very important. I've played Protoan decks that play all the Mind Shells and all the evasions.
Yep, and I'm not saying that's the wrong. I definitely see value in it. It's tough because that last deck slot is so precious, and we're going to get down to that right now. So we've got 2 tactics and conditions left that we haven't talked about yet, and we've got exactly 4 card slots left in the deck. I'm not sure where we're at on construction yet. We're going to have to add that up, but and that may dictate some of this. But at the end of this we've got two choices. We have Frenzy, which is a three threshold, 2 CC card that says target Protoan combatant you control gets +3/+3 this turn. Wow, that's just pure offensive firepower. I mean, nothing like a token becoming a 4/4, Madrox being a 5/5. You know, I mean, those are cheap Solarium investments.
Yeah, this card's great on offense and defense, and it's good in the token deck. It's good in the aggro deck. It's just very good. There aren't very many combat tricks in Sularia, and this wins you a lot of fights.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think Frenzy is just exactly the kind of secret math that you want to have, you know, behind the scenes. And the other card is a way different card, and that's Right of Domination. But Right is an amazing card with Madrox. I mean, just an absolute beast of a card with Madrox. So you've got Right of Domination is a 1 threshold, 1 CC card, your opponent's combatant phase. So this is not my combatant phase, my opponent's. Target Protoan combatant you control fights another Protoan combatant you control. They deal damage to each other equal to their attack value. If one of these combatants dies, put 2 +1/+1 counters on the other Protoan combatant. Wow. Like, so I'm going to make a bunch of little 1/1s, and I'm going to make monster dudes out of it. The 1 threshold is deceiving on this card. There may be some turns where, you know, or some situations where the 1 threshold matters, but for the most part, you're probably going to be using this card a little bit later in the game. But we wanted to give the flexibility for Right from a design perspective that as things change for the Protoan over time and new cards get added in, the 1 threshold might matter even more. So yeah, but I think this is just this is an excellent card here. It's 1 CC, so it's not going to hurt our construction costs. We could play a playset of them, but I'm also of the opinion we could grab a couple of evasions out of the mercenary stack, you know, and run essentially 6 evasive abilities in this deck, and get away with the 2 rights. Is kind of just like when we get them, they're great for us. But I'll take your thoughts on it too.
I mean, Frenzy does a pretty good imitation of evasion in most cases. Pretty much everything that's targeted in the game does damage. There are a few exceptions to that, but for the most part, if you really want to protect one of your guys and they try to storm you or feedback you or whatever, Frenzy is good at stopping that. I don't think we need the evasions necessarily. Right of Domination is like a very wordy card and seems a little complicated, but overall, there's very few situations where it doesn't net you value. And again, you want your guys to die most of the time. This is an outlet for that, and you get 2 counters out of it. Madrox goes crazy. Parasitics is good. Like anything that fights a Tricentis is extreme value. It's just a good card. It might be deceptive when you first read it, but like unless you literally only have like 2 tokens and a Bloodlust, it's not bad for you. But no, you do have to be careful because this isn't an optional ability. So there will be times when your opponent can take advantage of that, and if you have like 2 3/3s in play, they have to fight each other, and then you're SOL.
Yeah, you definitely, because if not, you can end up in your board in a very poor state. Because this is not this is required. So once a right is initiated in the Protoan, they don't stop until there is a clear-cut victor. And so, you know, you can do multiple rights, but that just means you have multiple surrender outlets. So how do you feel about this card? I mean, where we've got 4 slots, do you want 4 of them in the deck, or do you want to just go
I think
with
4 is a little much. You know, there are going to be a few games where you want 2 running at the same time, but I think most games you're only going to want 1. Because it does eat your guys pretty fast, and if they kill your hatchery or they kill your queen and you don't have little guys churning out, then it's going to eat your guys. But right. It is good enough, and it's 1 CC that I always want to have a couple.
So we'll go with 2. I think 2 is a good number here. That actually leaves us with 2 card slots left in the deck. The question is whether or not we want 4 frenzies.
I like Frenzy a lot.
Okay.
If we're having to choose between Frenzy and Right of Domination, I would rather play the Frenzies.
Well, I'm actually of the opinion, like we were talking about the Hive Queen being on the bubble, and maybe Frenzy's a better card here and going a little stronger on the tactic and conditions. So like going 22 combatants, 22 tactic and conditions, instead of going 24, 16, 20. And maybe that's where the Hive Queen doesn't make the cut in this deck because Frenzy just gives us that reach that we need, both offensively and defensively, to kind of make sure our threats that do get played are getting maximum value. So
yeah, I think I like that too. As much as I like Hive Queen, I think that our 4 and 5 and 9 combatants are going to fill out the top of the curve just fine without her, and having a trick
totally agree.
is going to be more value in the long run.
And that gives us the ability to play a playset of the Frenzies, which keeps them consistent in play. So I'm totally down with that, and I think that's a good cut. So we got our 60 cards. Now it's the moment of truth, Neil. We got to find out, do we have too many points or not? So we got 4, 8, or 4 and 3 is 7, and another 4 is 11, and another 4 is 15, and another 4 is 19, and another 4 is 23, with another 8 is 31, and another 6 is 37. So we are way over. And we knew this was going to happen.
Do we have 4 of all the ones? No, we have 2 Carapace Domes, right?
Yeah.
4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28. So we have 32 ones. Mm-hmm. So if that is the case, we only have room for 2 of the 3 cost combatants. Or 3 cost cards.
Without cutting some 2s.
Right.
Yeah, that would be our other option. We'd have to cut some 2s here.
Well, obviously, the Bloodlust. Cut 1 Matarox.
Yep.
We have 4 Matarox right now, right?
Yep. So that takes. I'm gonna not shove that to your hand.
This time. Don't put it in my hand. We can cut 1 Matarox. We only have 3 hives, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we need to get to 36 ones. We need to add 4 ones at the cost of 2s. So we can play some evasions. We could play some Scorpionid Strikers.
Yeah, I mean, Scorpionid would be a good aggressive combatant in the slots here. If we're adding Scorpionid Strikers, then I think we got to shave combatants from the list, right?
You could cut an Ashfall and add a Miasma Projector.
That
would gain 1.
Yeah. I mean, I was looking at what we have for type 1s with Primordial Sarah and Parasitics. I mean, if we're worried about Solarium, for the megalithids, then we could go Heroes Boons here if we wanted to. Those would be acceptable, but I'm with you. I think that obviously we can cut an Ashfall for a projector. That seems like a good cut. Oop, not all 3. Come on. Sorry, getting a little lag.
Do you only have 1 there?
No.
There you go. So that gives us 33. You can cut a Frenzy for an evasion. That'd give us 34.
1 second. I got to find the Miasma Projector first.
Okay. And that evasion could also be a Hero's Boon if you wanted it to be.
We can use an evasion here. Let me grab it.
How many
I kind of like the
play?
We got 4. I kind of like running multiple evasions here.
Okay. So
we can
cut 1 Parasitics. That would be okay. So now we're at 35. So we need 1 more.
Yeah, so this is a hard cut. I mean, you could cut the Tricentis. You could cut a Bloodlust. Or you could cut a Hatchery. But I think of the ones that haven't gotten cut down to 3 yet, Tricentis is the one that's probably the safest.
Yeah, for the state of this deck, I think Tricentis was the cut you want to make. And another 1 CC card we could consider is Kalara.
No, that's true. Kalara would be a good finisher here.
If you wanted to like cut those evasions and just play Kalaras, well, yeah.
We only probably need 2 Kalaras, though, right?
Right.
At
I
the
would
most.
never play more than 2. You just want to make sure that you have it on turn 6, because like the second one is not nearly as good, right? Like because the first one eats up all your guys, so the second one doesn't have any guys to eat. For those of you who want to read it, it's right here. It's pretty cool.
I'm going to go down to just 1 evasion. So that'll give us 5 evasion abilities in the deck, and then Kalara, 2 Kalaras will get us there.
Right. So
right.
This is a 6 threshold site. It's a big site. It makes 2 Solarium. We don't really care about the Solarium. It's a 1/10. Its stats are good. It's a type 1. As with most type 1, its stats are good. When you establish Mount Kalara, you may surrender X combatant tokens. For each combatant token surrendered this way, put 2 +1/+1 counters on Protoan combatants you control, divided any way you choose. This card is a finisher.
Yeah.
This card is... It's very strange, right? Because if you have a bunch of tokens, it's obviously really good. Every 1/1 becomes 2 worth of power and toughness. Now, if you have a Bloodlust, you're trading like 1 for 1 that way. Your 2/2s are becoming 2 counters. If you have 2 Bloodlusts, you're like trading down the curve. So depending on your situation, playing this card is optional, right? Like you may not want to do it.
The only time I would say it's still good to consider it is in that single Bloodlust play with Matarox in particular.
Right. So that was what I was getting to, is we were talking the whole time about how you want your guys to die. So this is a great outlet for that. And if you have 1 Matarox or 1 Parasitics or any combination of those things, the more the better. Like this card is multiplicative and you just go to the moon. Like if you have 5 tokens and a Matarox, which is like, I think probably a small board state for a deck like this, and you play this, you're just like, your Matarox is what? Like 10/10 minimum. It's...
Yeah, I mean, I literally have been able to make Matarox push to. I think I swung 1 turn for 84 damage.
Right. As soon as you have more than 1 of the guys that grow, Parasitics or Matarox, this card is insane. Like the amount of power that it generates is absurd. And so
it is tricky to set up. I mean, I will be the first one to tell you, like it's not an obvious like I hit turn 6 and so now I'm going to play Mount Kalara. Like sometimes the way the game is gone, you're not in a position where playing it on turn 6 is actually beneficial for you. So from a playing perspective, I'll tell you that like be prepared for this potential space, I guess, where you can't play it on time and you kind of have to just hold off for a little bit to make it work and set it up. When you do set it up, it is 100% the end of your opponent.
Yeah, it's a really interesting card because it's a way to leverage your influence into a real threat to kill your opponent. There aren't a lot of cards in the game that do that up to this point. Like your influence is just kind of to set up your resource base and give you a good gameplay throughout the game. This is one of the few cards that, like, I'm spending 6 influence and I'm going to kill you with it. Like, I'm not spending Solarium to kill you. It's interesting that way. And not that your Solarium really matters after you play the Kalara because they're just going to die, but
I'm totally on board with this card. Yeah, I think this is a great card, and I think it's well suited into being the kind of card you want to put into into a deck. And so I do think it's a good finisher card. It's a more impactful 1cc card. We could maybe have done the acid pool at 5, but the reality of that is that the acid pool is only going to be good for parasitics, and this is good for Matarox and parasitics. So I think it's a good choice. So we've officially built the deck. We have put everything together here. We've got a 60-90 deck, I believe. Let's make sure, but
I think we
pretty
counted
sure
it right.
yeah. But we can definitely double check it really fast. So we've got 4 plus 2 is 6, plus another 3 is 9, plus 3 is 12, plus 4 is 16, plus 3 is 19, plus 6 is 25. I'm showing there might be one over still. 6 and 6 is 12.
Did I do my math wrong? Whoops. So
hold on, 12. Let's see, we got 12, 16, 18, 21, 24, 28. Yep, we're one over still.
Oh, well.
All right, Neil.
Well, let's put another evasion in.
Yep, we'll put another evasion back in. We got to cut a 2cc card. My vote on that would probably be a Bloodlust here.
Bloodlust or another Parasitics. Parasitics is the finisher. You don't need like a million of them unless you really want to chain them.
That's true.
But if we're trying to keep them in play for the Kalara play, then
yeah, we definitely don't want to surrender them in that situation. So that works. We'll go to 2 Parasitics this here, and very good chance you're going to draw it by turn 5 anyways with 2 of them in the deck because you're pushing out. With the draw 2, you're going to draw 17 of your 60 cards, so a third of your deck. So you got to get straight up.
And I mean, I don't know what your feeling is, but I Ashfall very aggressively.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially with Madrox in play, why not?
Right.
I mean,
once you have a Bloodlust, like then you need to start deciding whether or not you should be Ashfalling. But you see,
I played a similar deck
with Ashfall
to this, but I played a similar deck to this at GPGF, but I didn't play. I actually did cut down to 3 Bloodlusts, and I think by the end of the tournament, I was convinced I wanted that last Bloodlust back in the list. So I think this is a good cut. I did play the Saranas in place of the Parasitics in that deck, and kind of went all in on this, token production and surrendering methodology. But I was using Metamorphosis Chambers and a few other things. So this is a drastically different deck than what I played at GPGF. But I like this deck, and I think this deck has got some real potential. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and collect this deck up and save it. And then on next week's stream, we'll play it. So whether Neil plays it or I plays it, that was good grammar, everyone.
Grammarly doesn't work in Hangouts, Jesse.
That's right. That's right. I it's my crutch, but we'll see how it does, and we'll put it up against the Jotun and the Cynthian. So I'll be building some Jotun and Cynthian alpha lists, and we'll pass this deck back and forth between the two of us, and we'll spend all next week playing games. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you're catching this after the stream is over, that's cool. Thank you so much for at least watching it. Be sure to give us a thumbs up if you like the video. That tells us that we're making content that you're enjoying. If you want to subscribe to the channel, we definitely love when people subscribe to our channel. You can also hit the little bell icon, which will allow you to get notified every time we go live, every time we post new content, and it just keeps you in touch with what we're doing on the YouTube end of things. And of course, I would be remiss to not say, if you aren't a backer for Reign of Terror yet, what are you waiting for? Head over to Kickstarter today, search Reign of Terror, and you'll find the campaign. We need your support to get to our funding goal. We're getting close to about 40% funded right now. We got a few weeks left in this thing. We do think we can get there if we get just enough eyes looking at it and getting excited about it. So again, thanks everyone, and Neil, thanks, appreciate it.
Oh yeah, we'll see you guys next week.